Hey, it's another little Wayne bite, just a little taste of this and that, and it's St. Patrick's Day, and this is the time of year when I guess there's a little Irish in all of us, even me. And so I'm actually going to make some corned beef and cabbage hand pies, or empanadas, whichever you prefer to call them. But they're wonderful little hand pies that are filled with corned beef, cabbage, a little Dijon mustard, some carrots. Really tasty and actually fun to put together too. Now before we get started, just a reminder, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and you get more recipes, craft ideas, restaurant reviews, even travel tips, all in the same spot. Just click on the subscribe button and the notification bell so you always know when new videos are coming out. So let's get started. We're going to start off with the dough, and the dough is really easy because we let the food processor do all the work. So right here I got my food processor. I'm going to put in here 2½ cups of flour, all-purpose flour, pretty basic. I'm going to add to that 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, a ½ teaspoon of salt, and then I'm going to put in here 12 tablespoons, that's 1½ sticks of butter, relatively cold, that goes in there, and then 6 ounces of cream cheese, and I just basically tear those in little bitty bits and pieces. And then lastly, I've got 1 large egg. Drop it in there. Those are the ingredients. I'm going to put them all together, turn the food processor on, and just let it do its thing. You know, you kind of have to plug these in order for them to work, so let me do that. Works better when you plug it in. Now the bottom line with this thing, it's just going to go for about a minute or so, and it'll all just come together as a dough, and it's all good. And that's all there is to it. See how well it came together? I'm going to take this out, sort of form it into a nice big dough, and then I'm going to divide it in 2 equal portions so I can work with my hand pies in separate groups of 8. Okay, so let me grab a plastic wrap. I'll be right back. So all I'm going to do is just pull this out, form it into a nice dough, and then I divide it in half, like I said before, so they end up being able to work this in batches. It's a little easier to do it that way as hand pies. Okay, so that's the whole amount, and again, I'm going to divide that in half. So I do it in 2 separate batches, just like that. And then I'm going to fold this down into a bit of a disc, just because it makes it easier to roll it out when I start working with it. So that's 1. That's 2. Easy enough. I'll just grab my plastic wrap. I'm going to wrap them up separately. I'm going to wrap 1 up, just like that. And number 2. There we go. Now these are going to go in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. And after that, they'll be ready to roll out and make our hand pies. But in the meantime, once I put these in the fridge, we're going to start on the filling. So now we're going to make our filling. It's corned beef, cabbage, onions, and carrots. At the end, I'm going to add some Swiss cheese and some Dijon mustard. But let's start off by heating up our pan here. You get a medium heat going. You don't want this too hot when you first start off. You're going to saute some onions for a couple of minutes. Then you're going to add in the other ingredients. You're going to add the cabbage in at the very last minute with a little salt and pepper. So let's get started here. I'm going to put 2 tablespoons of butter and 1 tablespoon of olive oil. Now once I get to a medium heat, I'm actually going to do it very, very mellow here. It's starting to bubble up a little bit. Perfect. I'm going to add to that 1/4 of a cup of onions. And I'm going to saute those for about 2 minutes just so they get nice and translucent. While those get started, get the rest of my ingredients over here. Oh, I'm all right nearby. So this just goes for about 2 minutes. You know, it's funny, when I was working on this recipe initially, I mentioned it on my Facebook page, and people were like, well, how Irish are you, Wayne? Well, the truth of the matter is I did the ancestry DNA. We found from that there's a percentage of my lineage, on my mother's side actually, that has Northern European, United Kingdom, even Germany, and Amsterdam connections, which is kind of cool. The United Kingdom was only Scotland. It didn't include Ireland, but I'm still going to say there's a little bit of Irish in me as well. So I'm going to give this 2 minutes. To that, I'm going to add 1½ cups of corned beef. Now this is corned beef that I got from the deli counter, and I literally just chopped it up into smaller pieces. And don't worry about how small you have to chop it right now, because we're going to chop it up a little bit more so after we actually take it out and cool it off a little bit. To that, I'm going to add 1/4 of a cup of carrots. And I've got 1/3 of a cup of Idaho potato that I've just peeled and chopped. So I'm going to let this go for another 2 minutes. And then after that, I'm going to add in my cabbage. Oops, a little messy there. I can be kind of messy cook at times. Now I'm in Chicago. In Chicago, we dye our river green, which is actually very cool. And we also drink like fish here in Chicago for, well, just about any day of the week. But it's really crazy St. Patrick's Day. If you've ever been to Chicago to see the river dyed green, it's a really fun thing to do. It's a great thing. And we're finally, with COVID still happening around us, we're still starting to celebrate a little bit more so than we have in the past. Now that's been about 2 minutes. I'm going to add to that now 1.5 cups of cabbage that I've chopped up. And I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. Now this I'm going to let saute for about 5 minutes now until everything gets nice and blended and the cabbage is wilted and all the moisture that's in here gets sort of cooked down as well. Now just a side note, you don't have to cook this within an inch of its life. Once you take it off the heat, everything's going to wilt down a little bit more so, and then when you chop it up into smaller bits, it'll be much more manageable to sort of stuff inside of our little empanadas or meat pies, whichever you want to call them. Either name is appropriate. This has been about 5 minutes of cooking. I'm going to turn my heat off now, and what I'm going to do is let this just sit here on the stovetop until it completely cools down. Once it cools down, I'm actually going to chop it up even finer on a cutting board and then add in a little bit of Swiss cheese and some Dijon mustard, and it'll be ready to fill our empanadas or hand pies. My filling has cooled down a little bit now, so I can chop it up. I'm going to transfer it over to my cutting board right here. There, like that. Looks great. There we go. And then with a sharp knife, I'm just going to chop it up even more so. So really get into smaller pieces. The smaller you chop it up, the more you can actually fit into a hand pie without any sort of bumps and lumps on the outside of the crust. So I'm just going to chop it up. Especially focus on the potatoes. Make sure you get the potatoes chopped down small. You don't want the lumpy potatoes in the way of your little empanada. I'm going to transfer this to a mixing bowl now, right here. Nice and clean. Take your time, Wayne. Sometimes I go too fast and I spill things everywhere. All right. Now that's in there. What I'm going to add in there is 1/2 cup of Swiss cheese and then 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard, which is right here as well. Nice and flavorful. Love it. Mix all that together, and that's my filling. And you can certainly taste that to see what you think of the seasonings, the spices. Maybe you want a little bit more salt and pepper in there. Just check it. Do a little taste. Good stuff. All right, we're good to go. The next step is simply going to be to roll out our little dough in little circles and then stuff them with our filling, and then you're going to bake them. Awesome. Let's get started. I am rolling out the dough right now. This is only one portion of it. I do it in sections. But what I've done is I let it go for about an hour. You want the dough to get really stiff before you start working with it. You want the elasticity to be there as well. But I'm rolling it out. I'm going to roll it out to about 1/8 inch thickness, and that's about the thickness of a nickel, just so you know. I've got it rolled out, and then once it's rolled out here, I have this 5-inch circle ring here, which is great. It came in a whole set of circles, which I think is kind of awesome. So I basically just used that. You can do whatever you want. You can use like a plate or make your own sort of rough circle. Doesn't really matter, but I rolled these out to 5 inches, and you should be able to get about 8 per half set of dough. So all I'm gonna do is just cut circles here. 2, 3, I got 4. And I'll just pull away the excess dough, and I'll roll this other dough out again, and I'll make 4 more. So got these out. That. Perfect. Let that sit for a minute. You can put this back in the refrigerator if you want to, but basically you want to get that ready for the next round. And then I've got to get a spatula, which helps to make sure you get it off nice and cleanly. And I also have an egg over here. I've got 1 egg that I'm going to break. Just like that. I'm going to whisk it up a little bit. Whisking, party of 1. All right, that's good. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I've got a scooper here. You're going to put about 1.5 tablespoons or more of filling on the inside of this. First thing you're going to do is brush the inside of your dough here. Nice little egg wash on the inside of that. Then I'm going to take, like I said, a little over 1.5 tablespoons of filling. That's about that. So it's just like a heaping amount. This is a 1 tablespoon scooper. It's actually great. So you take that like that, And what I'll do is I'll take this and I'll just use a fork. And I'll flatten that down as I fold it over so it just stays inside. And bring it down and I touch the edge there. And try to touch it as evenly as possible. Try to keep everything inside. Stay in there, guy. Just like that. Even, even, even. And also like use my hands to make sure everything is nice and tight on the inside. Like that. And then I'll use my fork here and I'll dip it in a little bit of flour and I'll just actually press the edges here. See, a little carrot got stuck in there, but that's still okay. Just like that. Boom, 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 boom. Okay? Then I'll use my spatula just so I can be as gentle as possible with this to put it over here on my baking sheet, just like that. And so I'm gonna do the rest of them. I've got to do 8 total with that first batch of dough. So here are my first 8. Now I've preheated my oven to 350 degrees. Now the next step is to brush all of these with a little bit more egg wash so they get nice and golden brown when they're in the oven. So I'm just gonna do that real quick and they'll be ready to go. Now you can also poke a little hole in the top of these, vent them a little bit, just so there's a place for that extra steam to go as these guys start puffing up and getting ready to present themselves for a meal. Love it. Okay, beautiful. Now, these are gonna go into 350 degree oven for about 25 to 30 minutes until they're nice and golden brown. So here they are right from the oven. They look great. Mine took about 35 minutes. It can range anywhere from 30 to 35 minutes depending on your oven. You want them nice and golden brown, which they look. Everybody's oven varies a little bit, so you'll have to test it each time to see exactly what works for you. I'm gonna put a few of these here on my cooling rack here so you can see them up close there. And I'm also going to break into one in a minute, even though you should let them cool for about 30 minutes before you bite into them because they can be very toasty on the inside. Serve these guys up with a little bit of mustard as well, Dijon or regular, whichever your preference is. Let me cut this open so you get a little view of that. Oof. Put a little mustard on there. Oh my God. Very, very good. Love it. All the information you need is in the information section down below. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Also, leave me your comments. I'd love to know what you think about this segment, anything I've done in the past, and anything you'd like to see in the future. Hey, thanks again for watching, everybody. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe. Happy St. Patrick's Day, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.